Over the past 12 months, the microchip industry has been on fire. Just look at Nvidia's stock over the past year. This time, last year, Nvidia was trading under $270, but just 2 weeks ago, the stock hit an all-time high of $950, causing Nvidia's market cap to surge well past $2 trillion and make Jensen Huang the richest person of Chinese descent worldwide. But what if I told you Nvidia just released their annual report and for the first time in the company's history, labeled China's most successful tech company Huawei as a key competitor for the future of its business? It will obviously affect the future of tech and microchips, but it will also influence the future of geopolitics. In this story, Huawei is both a David and Goliath, filling the two roles in a complex battle between the US and China. On one hand, Huawei remains a Goliath-sized giant. It has been named one of the top 10 most innovative companies in the world and continues to spend tens of billions every year, often more than any other tech company in the world, on R&D to advance its products. But in the eyes of many, Huawei is also seen as a David, an underdog in a mighty battle against the US government, who relentlessly uses sanctions to stop both Huawei and China's growth. But Huawei is not a defeated tech company. This even made headlines last week on CNBC as Huawei's profit doubled in 2023 as smartphone and autos business picked up. The SCMP also reported this story showing the company now has a profitable pathway out of US sanctions. But here is where things get very interesting. According to Nvidia's latest annual report filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, Huawei is listed as a major competitor for integrated GPUs, large cloud services, companies that incorporate hardware and software for CPUs, and networking products consisting of switches, network adapters, and cable solutions. As you can see, there are many layers to the microchip market, but for a full breakdown and understanding, stay tuned to the end of today's video as I welcome Hunter Scharf of Alset Capital to the show. Alset Capital is changing the future of AI cloud computing, and Hunter is going to give us all some incredible insights into what this industry and the future holds. But first, let's zoom out and examine the macroeconomics of the chip industry and further break down this intense battle between the US and China. The truth is, the US has had the dominant hand in the microchip industry for years and is doing everything in its power to maintain its position. It's no secret to anyone that artificial intelligence is starting to have an impact on nearly every industry and is already changing the future of our world. According to the research of PwC's Global Artificial Intelligence Study, AI could contribute up to $15.7 trillion to the global economy in 2030, more than the current output of China and India combined. At the heart of the AI industry is Nvidia's signature A100 chip, which is the world's premier microchip powering AI technology. The US has restricted Nvidia and other companies around the globe from selling these advanced AI microchips to China. But the microchip industry is a fascinating one because it requires collaboration between a variety of countries. This is because no one country is 100% self-reliant and able to produce 100% of their own microchips. For example, despite not producing a single microchip, the Netherlands is arguably the most important country in the world for microchip production. The Dutch company ASML is the only company on the planet with the advanced machinery needed to produce the world's most advanced microchips. As seen in the photo here, this machine is an engineering masterpiece, extremely complex, and a mandatory tool needed for advanced chip production. Therefore, every country in the world is reliant on good relations with the Dutch in order to produce groundbreaking microchips. Last week, Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao told Dutch Foreign Trade Minister in Beijing the Netherlands should fulfill contractual obligations and ensure normal trade of lithography machines. But the reality is the Dutch have very few options but to listen to the US government and ban the sale of these machines to China. As a result, this has forced China to turn domestically and find creative ways to quietly cut reliance on advanced ASML lithography machines. Once again, the big takeaway from this ongoing saga between the US and China's microchip rivalry is that containing China is never an easy task. When the Chinese are forced in a corner, they are some of the most innovative minds that will work relentlessly hard to overcome any obstacle. A great example of this can be found in this Bloomberg article entitled "China Secretly Transforms Huawei into Most Powerful Chip War Weapon." If you visit the Huawei campus in Shenzhen, you'll see an unusual resident floating around the ponds of one of China's largest tech companies. Black swans are kept as a reminder to avoid complacency and prepare for unexpected crises. In the ensuing fight for survival after the US blacklisting in 2019, Ren Zhangfei, the founder and CEO of Huawei, moved as many as 10,000 developers onto 24-hour shifts in a race to redesign its circuit boards and software so that they could function without American technology. The US government argues China can't be trusted with the most advanced AI microchips. If these chips fall into the hands of the Chinese military, who knows what power it could yield to the government in Beijing. Although this is quite a paradoxical way of thinking. The US military has caused more destruction around the globe the past 40 years than any other military on the planet, while China has not been involved in a war of any kind since 1979. But a discussion on military interventions is beyond the scope of today's video. As I mentioned earlier, the plot thickens as the island of Taiwan is the key player to this entire global microchip industry and remains the cornerstone of tensions between US and China relations. The US government is worried China will invade Taiwan at any moment, completing its vision of a unified China, and whether this happens will of course control the entire future of the microchip industry. Over 90% of the world's most advanced microchips are in fact made in Taiwan. Everything from your toaster to your television, your car to your smartphone, and every single piece of electronics in between requires microchips. This is why Business Insider last year predicted a war over Taiwan would be even more damaging to the US economy than COVID. Last August, Huawei shocked the world with the launch of its newest phone, the Mate 60 Pro. Huawei timed the release of this phone to coincide directly with US Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo's visit to China. This was no doubt China flexing some muscle and showing the US it's ready to fight back. A teardown for Bloomberg News found the majority of the components in Huawei's Mate 60 were in fact all made in China, including the first advanced 5G mobile 7nm processor also made in China. But fast forward to today, and the current battle between the US and China is AI microchips. On one side, we have Nvidia, one of the world's most valuable companies, and their superior A100 microchip that powers the AI used in everything from self-driving cars, pharmaceuticals, and even advanced weapons like fighter jets. But on the other side is the Chinese tech giant Huawei, who only knows how to adapt and survive the harshest of challenges. Launched late last year, Huawei's Ascend 910B has emerged as a viable alternative to Nvidia's A100 in the Chinese market. According to US semiconductor researchers, this new chip from Huawei can compete with Nvidia's A100 in terms of powering AI algorithms. This even prompted Nvidia chief executive Jensen Huang to describe Huawei as, quote, really good company. He went on to state, they're limited by whatever semiconductor processing technology they have, but they'll still be able to build very large systems by aggregating many of those chips together. Everyone, the microchip battle between the US and China is honestly forcing both countries to innovate faster and constantly adapt to what the industry needs. Right now, the world is demanding advancement in artificial intelligence, and if you're an investor wanting to take advantage of this shift in AI, I want you to pay attention to this next segment. As promised, I want to share with you my entire discussion with Hunter Scharf. Alset Capital is a fascinating player in the AI computing space and is working directly with Nvidia to help keep up with market demand. Alset Capital aims to position itself as the leading publicly listed owner of AI computing infrastructure. So enjoy today's conversation and all the insights into this fascinating world of AI microchips. Well, everybody, as promised, I'm very excited to have Hunter Scharf here from Alset Capital live in the studio to give us a full insider view into this industry, AI microchips, and most importantly, Alset Capital. Hunter, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Cyrus.
Absolutely. Well, Hunter, we discussed in today's video, this intense battle between the US and China, AI microchips, and I think your company has a very interesting play into this. So tell us a little bit more about the opportunity with Alset Capital and what you guys are really doing in the field of AI microchips.
The idea for Alset Capital is really to give our shareholders, our investors, access to a portfolio of investment companies that is 100% focused on AI infrastructure. If you're familiar, or if your audience is familiar with the GPUs that Nvidia creates and manufactures in Taiwan, this is probably the hottest commodity on the planet right now. Sam Altman basically says this is the next gold because these chips are just so valuable. And I would reference, an example like Ken Griffin's Citadel, who mentioned that if chips stop coming from Taiwan, it's a 5 to 10% hit to GDP for the US. And so you can just appreciate how valuable these GPUs are that Nvidia is developing, and there's other companies looking at developing these. But really, what Alset Capital is a company that has made investments into some very exciting and attractive businesses that are focused on AI infrastructure. Our business model is very simple. We own and operate H100s for Nvidia, and we give companies that desperately need access to this compute to train large language models, to build models and agents in AI. We simply give them access to that compute. And in a global sort of macro environment that's strained from the supply end and has massive demand, we've sort of uniquely positioned ourselves from an investment perspective to find companies that have access to low lead time and relatively cheap hardware to give us a competitive advantage in the market. Because what you're seeing right now is companies can order H100s from Nvidia, and they can take up to 9 months to be delivered. Right. And where, there's speed to market is everything in fast-paced technology environment. Right. And so we're simply saying that the infrastructure, the picks and shovels business in AI, if you believe in the proliferation of AI, you really should own a piece of the infrastructure that's actually the underlying picks and shovels business that proliferates it.
And I think what's an interesting one here, Hunter, is the demand that you said. And I think it's because this is such a hot commodity, getting these advanced microchips. Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming that the major tech companies, right, like the Googles, the Meta, the Amazon, they're probably trying to purchase as much as that. So does that certainly play into the supply and demand problems that we're seeing right now? Is that why there's not enough supply?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a topic of discussion across every single boardroom in America right now. How are we getting into AI? Yeah. Now, obviously, the Magnificent Seven, as we call it, companies, are the biggest customers buying these GPUs. Right. Some buy them directly from Nvidia. Some buy them in bulk orders from a company like Supermicro. If you've ever heard of Supermicro, it's basically the largest assembler of H100 servers. Okay. So Nvidia just develops the GPU that goes into the server, but it has to be, there's a CPU, there's a motherboard, there's a cooling system, and Supermicro sort of puts all that together. And that's what we actually announced earlier today, that we have built a partnership with Earthmade, which is one of Supermicro's largest distributors, and it's part of our secret sauce as to how we get access to these machines. But back to your question, on the demand side, you're absolutely right. The Metas, the Googles, the Microsofts of the world are buying thousands of these H100s and soon to be B100s from Nvidia, the next iteration. Right. They are in their own arms race. They're competing to create artificial general intelligence, which is what we've been now hearing about for a few years. And that's the Holy Grail really in AI. Right. But what happens, to your point, is that when these companies are putting billions of dollars into buying this hardware, and obviously by nature of the fact that their orders are so big, they get put at the front of the line. Right. It leaves the medium-sized and smaller-sized players with a lot tougher time finding access to this compute. And when you're paying $300,000 per server, you can imagine a company that just raised $10 million in a Series A or Series B round. Right. They don't want to go spend a third or a half of that capital buying 10 H100s. Because they need to hire people. They have other research and development requirements. They just want access to the compute, and that's what we do. We provide that compute to them in a way that's easy and seamless for them, without them have to deal with the minutia of the supply and demand dynamics that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a really good business model. So essentially, you're helping fulfill this demand that we're seeing in the market from these medium to smaller businesses, the ones that aren't the big seven tech giants that we know about, but these up and coming companies. And I think you also hit on a really good point of that AI really is in the boardroom discussion of almost every company. We've seen this now transform almost every industry. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, even here on YouTube, I mean, AI is making a very big difference, and even the video that we're recording today. Tell us a little bit more about the future of this market, kind of AI in general, and why this is so important.
In boardrooms across America right now, companies are trying to figure out how they can leverage the data that they have in order to develop sort of intellectual property and proprietary products in AI.
Right.
But what they all realize is that they cannot be real in the AI space if they don't have access to the computing power.
Right.
Any model that you've heard of, the ChatGPT, the Bards, the Groks, those are trained on hundreds, if not thousands, of these H100 machines, and they're also trained on billions of data points. And so you can imagine that every single company, whether it's in healthcare, defense, infrastructure, all of these industries are saying, all the giants in these industries are really saying, okay, we've got the data that we would need to build a model. We can hire world-class talent. Now we just need the hardware. And that's why you've been seeing this massive sort of demand and capital influx into the actual purchase of hardware. And I think from an Alset perspective, you know, as you said, Cyrus, there's hundreds of different companies now doing something in AI.
Right.
There's healthcare companies doing, you know, advanced cancer research. There's just such a wide range. I think from Alset's perspective, we're simply saying, if you believe in the proliferation of AI, if you believe that, you know, one of these technologies or many of them are going to succeed, you know, some of them are going to succeed and some aren't. But what I can guarantee is that they all need access to compute.
Right.
And so having exposure to that infrastructure, the economies of scale piece of this puzzle, I think is worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hunter, I want to zoom out on more on the macro level, and I want to talk about kind of geopolitics, because in today's video we talked a little bit about, you know, how the United States obviously is a major AI player. So is China. You know, both of them are in this technology. I did get a chance to interview one of the most outstanding minds on AI and the metaverse, and he very much hit on that point that, you know, China and the U.S. are kind of going towards that AGI, that artificial general intelligence. That's certainly the goal. And, you know, and in his mind, you know, it would be good if both the U.S. and China, you know, were kind of working together in that, because AGI is something that could really help the world in the future. And so I want to know a little bit more kind of geopolitics. I mean, obviously we hit on Taiwan today. We know that Taiwan is the center of microchips in general. 90% of the world's top microchips coming from Taiwan. But it's also the cornerstone of, you know, U.S.-China tensions is certainly the future of Taiwan. So hit a little bit on the macro level as far as what you guys are seeing from, you know, geopolitics and around the world.
This is part of what makes this industry so fascinating, is that it's sort of woven into these massive macroeconomic themes.
Right.
And further to what you mentioned, Cyrus, about the, you know, Taiwan being in the center of that, you know, geopolitical tension, it would be much nicer if we could all work together in this kind of scenario. And I think, you know, Nvidia is actually a company that really tries to be quote unquote Switzerland in this type of situation. They've designed chips separate to the H100 GPUs that the US has approved to be sold into China. But obviously, as you know now, Huawei is developing their own chips. And so I think Nvidia's made a really good decision here of not trying to make an enemy out of China, but really just trying to figure out a way that we can find a happy medium where everybody wins. And that's what Nvidia has done. Now, as you mentioned as well, the actual manufacturing of these GPUs is extremely technical, and it requires advanced machinery. And Taiwan simply has a massive moat around their manufacturing these GPUs. And so you can expect that Taiwan, and it's really one of the main reasons why Taiwan is so important to the whole supply chain in the US. I mean, chips, let's put AI aside for a second. Chips go into everything. Every electronic, cars, planes, you know, everything that you can think of gets a chip, a microchip, and those are designed mostly and manufactured mostly in Taiwan. And then I'll just add one more thing. You know, the US has made strides in developing their own investments into building GPU manufacturing plants in the US domestically. And that's why you saw the CHIP Act from Joe Biden's camp, that's looking at investing huge amounts of capital into building the manufacturing plants necessary to build GPUs domestically. But that's no easy feat, and that's why Taiwan is so critical, because this is going to take decades to catch up in any serious way for the U.S. to actually be able to manufacture these locally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a fascinating thing to study. I mean, it's a fascinating sector of our global economy because, as you said, this really touches all of our lives. You know, these
Hmm.
computer chips, these microchips, and it is
Hmm.
so important. It's of course why we run this geopolitical channel. You know, Taiwan is a topic we talk on a lot.
Hmm.
U.S.-China relations. I really like those comments that you made about Nvidia. Hunter,
Hmm.
let's go ahead and end our interview today. I want you to just tell our viewers here a little bit more about your company, how it's listed on the stock exchange, where they can find that, and where they can find more information about your company if people are interested in learning more.
You can find more information about the company Alset Capital at alsetai.com. There's a corporate presentation on there that walks through all the details of what we, plan to do and hope to achieve as a major provider of AI infrastructure hardware in North America and beyond internationally. And I think I will mention as well, this is important that, we are interested in looking in global markets, and it's part of this China-US dynamic that Chinese companies, because they cannot bring GPUs, they have embargoed from bringing GPUs into China. They look to lease computing power in international jurisdictions. And so
Right.
we're looking at a lot of those opportunities as well, because they will pay a premium to get access to the best hardware.
Yeah, no doubt.
Um,
Big
so, yeah,
opportunity.
absolutely. And so I'll just finally mention the company right now is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange Venture
Mhm.
under the symbol KSUM, and in Germany on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange under the symbol 1R60.
Very good.
And I will also say that we hope to be listed in the US as well very soon. So we'll keep you up to speed on that. I'll also mention, Cyrus, I'm happy to talk with any of your viewers who are excited about the space. So feel free to reach out to the company at ir@allsetai.com and hopefully talk to some of you guys soon.
Everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation about the importance of microchips. I want to thank Hunter Scharf and the team at Alset Capital for coming on today's program and giving us all some better insights and knowledge into this fascinating industry. As always, you can count on us for the latest in geopolitical trends and also the latest news from both the US and China as we continue to cover important events like microchips. Thank you all for your amazing support. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of today's video, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next one soon.